Hey guys, so before we proceed into the video, here's a little update for everyone. So this is a disclaimer for any interruption in the internet or the quality of the video of our speakers and on the host side. So if at all the audio is good, go ahead and leave your phone at the side and feel free to listen to the recorded audio chat. So always remember, it's not all about the quality of the video, but more towards the content of the video. So we really hope that you guys have fun and leave a comment below on what you actually learned, or if you would like to share your experience on this particular topic in the comment section below. So have fun, guys.
You've got to find a practice that works for you. Remember our inherent wholeness that is within all of us, right? We need to basically embrace all parts of ourselves. There's not one way. When you talk about the light visualization, it works for certain people. Like certain people are really visual. I'm not one. That takes time. And so that's why the practice is important. So you can actually practice to the point that you can actually shift the nervous system within like 7 minutes.
This series is brought to you by the Reset app, an amazing app that equips you to be happy by flexing the positive mindset muscle. So go ahead and download today. Link is in the description below. It's free.
Hi, Wai Ying. It's been a couple of days since we last spoke. Thanks for your time to have this conversation. Just as a brief introduction, today we're having a conversation with a dear friend, Wai Ying. Wai Ying's based in Melbourne. She's a wellness consultant, and her areas of interest and specialization are in yoga, meditation, and mindset practices. So today we're going to have a conversation around the area of the mechanics of the mind and how mindfulness meditation can help us to be more human, right? Mm-hmm. And this is in alignment with our project, which is centered around World Mental Health Day, which is on the 10th of October. So we're getting a series of about 10, 15 conversations, engaging with people like yourself, Wai Ying, who are engaged in different sorts of practices, modalities, and platforms to help people to understand that mental health, emotional health is all related to this whole idea of being more human, which is more conscious, more aware, and more response able. So maybe as an introduction, you can tell us a bit about yourself and how you leverage and came into this space. As I understand, you trained in a different area, and now your passion is in wellness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to speak on a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. So I guess I will tell you the story of how I got into this whole area. It was kind of a bit of a roundabout way in, I guess, for a lot of us. It wasn't as if my parents were like meditators or not, but having said that, I had, a little bit of exposure to the practice of yoga through my father. And he wasn't going to official classes, so to speak. He just was doing some practices based on the book by Richard Hilterman, I think that's his name. And so when I came to Melbourne to study, I had the opportunity that I could actually do some formal classes because I was just curious, because my dad was doing all these kind of weird, from as a child, it was weird, kind of like movement with his belly and was standing on his head. But what I did notice, it changed his mood. It shifted something in him, right? And so I thought, well, okay, so there was the opportunity through the student union to try something, and I did it, and being kind of a little bit hypermobile, flexible person, my egoic mind basically say, oh, you're pretty good at this. so it just kept me interested because I didn't find it was difficult. Having said that, it's actually the flexibility that I've had has in the long term hasn't really paid off. So I just don't want people to think that they need to be flexible to do yoga, because in fact, I had to spend many years finding stability in my movement, right? But anyway, so what I did was that I, the whole pursuit of, academic, professional pursuit took over my life, but I did sort of still continue with my practice of yoga, but it was more on the physical side of things. But then at about 16 years ago, I guess that whole reality of, studying hard, getting a great job, getting yourself set up sort of financially in your own house kind of got a little bit blown away, because at the age of 34, I had a cancer diagnosis. So it's probably not something that you expect, at that sort of age. And I know, Derek, you've been through something similar yourself, but my feeling was that, when it first happened, it was as if somebody just pulled a rug under my feet, basically, right? And it's like sort of like, it was actually in hindsight, going through the cancer process, so to say, the operation, the treatment was actually the easier bit. Like, because you're told what to do. You're told, come to this appointment, you got to turn up for this scan or that chemo, you're told what to do. But what I found, the tricky thing happened was that after I finished all my rounds of treatment, and also that the timing coincided, we moved into our new house as well. And I remember this moment instinctively where I sat down, I've dropped the kids off at kindergarten. So both my kids were under 5 during that time. I dropped them off. I came home. I was by myself. My husband's gone off to work. I sat there and I looked around. I had an amazing garden in our new place. Looked around the house and going, wow, like the kids are healthy. We got this house, sort of like a dream house, whatever you want to call it, our family home. And I've got the sort of like the clean bill of health, so to speak. I've done my treatment, and husband's got a job, and I've got, a job that I could go back to when I was ready. But you know what, Derek? I was sad. I felt really sad. I felt this deep sadness within me. And, and guess what my mind did? My mind straight away thought, well, there's no reason why you should be sad. Come on, man. you have like, kids are healthy. You got the house. You've got, you've been working for this. And, you sort of set up financially, And I'm going, okay, this is really interesting. But as we all are, I kind of did sort of just ignore it and just kind of, I noticed it, but I didn't do anything about it because I needed to get on with life. That was the thinking. I needed to get on with life. And, but it's really interesting that same week, my dad rang me up and asked me about this, whether I heard of this place called the Gola Foundation. So I'm not sure whether you've heard of Gola. So it's a foundation started by Ian Gola, he himself had cancer, and he's used like mindful meditation and diet to sort of a very holistic way, getting himself back to health. I say, yes, I've heard. In fact, my GP actually thought it would be a good thing to go to after treatment. And they say, oh, why are you not going? Then I say, well, it's like 10 days and blah, blah, blah. All those excuses. Yeah, right. And yeah, so, but anyway, my dad, she said, well, okay, well, decide on which one you want to go to. We'll come, because they live between Melbourne and Malaysia. So we'll come, we'll take care of the kids, right? You and Alan, go. That's my husband. Go to it. So we did. We went, And guess within 2 days of in that meditation practice, because at that point I wouldn't consider myself having a formal meditation practice, but within 2 days in that retreat, that familiar friend of sadness came back, and I was a glittering mess for like 3 days. And it was just something was moving through me, like just right. I felt safe enough, I felt supported enough that I allowed the process to happen, and I had the space, I guess, I didn't have to cook, no kids, nothing, and but what was I would like to say about that, it was like that was probably my first kind of somatic experience of something really moving through me that I really recognized. And after the 3 days, what I noticed, that sort of tightness, the constriction within the certain part of my body has actually dissipated. And there was like a sense of a lightness in me. Yeah. But my thinking mind was still going, what the heck was that? What's that? I was trying to put it in context. I was trying to explain it and stuff like that. And I guess that sort of curiosity and my kind of passion of liking to learn just sort of like, okay, this is really interesting. I think, meditate. I need to keep some sort of like meditative practice going, right? So that's kind of how I got into it. And would you like me to talk a little bit about the type of practice? Because there's so many different meditation, like the type of practice that I gravitated to.
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things. One is I really like what you're saying, because it brings up to my mind a conversation we had a couple of days ago where the sentence that you shared, feeling is an essential component of living. And that really struck a chord with me, because most of us, especially people of our generation, right? I think this dates our age. That we were taught to be more logical, right? You study hard, you get a good degree, you work hard, you be with your employer, and she'll be right, mate. That was it, right?
Exactly right. That's such a ingrained conditioning, and I'm not even and if you're not doing that, it's like there must be something wrong, like there's something really wrong. But what happens is that what I found with that is that sort of desire to, that miswanting, I guess, of the mind, that getting a good job, getting a good education, getting, a good property or whatever, is like, would make you, after that, everything will fall into place, But I guess from my experience, it didn't happen. And the ability of coming to a place where, you give yourself the space in your life to actually just feel. And it's about being alive, isn't it? Like to feel what's going on in your body.
Yeah. So maybe a bridge that we could maybe share, because there'll be a lot of people who are viewing our conversation later, saying, hey, look, I was brought up in a similar type of environment where we were brought up with this type of conditioning, this type of behavior patterns. And how do I actually dispel the myths in my mind, actually, that yoga and mindfulness and meditation actually works? I mean, for people who are brought up in today's environment, the things that we're talking about is more mainstream, right? And there's so many different branches, like you say, of wellness, meditation, and physical, mental, emotional, spiritual practices. But for people like us, how do we connect this logical conditioning towards more of an emotional and mental acceptance? I suppose that it is okay to feel. It is okay to come back to the sensations in our body, to truly understand who we are, in this entire process of being more human, right?
Yeah.
So how do we actually take a step towards getting more information or knowledge to dispel this myth, to say,
Yeah,
this is real for me now. Yeah.
yeah. I think one of the first thing is that the listening that we want to do in our body is a different language. It's almost like I akin it to you're learning a different language, right? So I would say go gently, go kindly. That's always been my motto. It's not something that you need to work hard at. It's actually it's a lot about a willingness and a curiosity of like what's actually happening there, because we live in a society. It's not even just like I think there is we live in in developed society. There's so much value placed on what's between these ears here, right? Whereas I think that the whole idea of the mind is actually not up here. It's actually in here, right? And 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 that requires a different way of listening. And it could be listening to just really gentle kind of vibrational sense. Unfortunately, in a lot of our cultures now, it's like even, and I would say to a certain extent, certain types of yoga, where when you start to go into those movement practice, it's almost like a workout rather than a work in. That so much is emphasized on the shape that you create rather than the emphasis of the listening. That is really what the practice is actually inviting us to do, because we are so focused on creating this kind of like straight shapes that we actually have lost that ability to listen. So even like practices that were meant to be very somatically based, so somatic just basically means your inner experience, so have turned into like shape forming. Because when we go fast, we don't feel.
Yeah. So one of the things that we hear a lot now is slow down, be more, and it's this whole being open to the experience, having curiosity, and learning to listen to our body. One of the books that I like is by Deb Shapiro. Our Body Speaks Our Mind.
Mm-hmm.
And just going back to that intuitive feeling, right? And this sentence just popped up in my head. The noise in our head is drowning out the song in our heart. Really,
So true.
isn't it?
So
It's
true.
so true.
So true.
So with the work that that you've experienced and that you continue doing in the area of yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, how do we actually take the first step maybe in this transition from reducing the noise in our head and tuning up the song in our heart?
Yeah, I think one of the very I love simple practices because I think having practice right through from being a 19-year-old to a parent, being pregnant and being a parent and stuff. I think whatever we do in our practices need to really meet our lives with honesty, with truth. Obviously, it's not saying, I don't want to practice just because I don't want to practice, but like you gotta. So I think like one simple thing is like 5 minutes, 10 minutes each day, if you can, pause, sit down, like it could be actually standing, it doesn't have to be sitting down. Pause and just, I like to use my hands, because that gives us like kind of pointers. So, pause and put one hand on the heart, put one hand on the belly, just kind of notice how you're breathing, how you actually, just like a check-in. That's it, nothing fancy, right? And I think when you start with that, and then that might actually, start to give you information. Yeah. I mean, I don't call it, intuition, gut feel for no reason. I don't think. like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah. So for someone who just gets started, just getting in tune with their feelings, into their breathing, into the sensations in their body and their emotions, what then? Okay, I'm doing some breathing exercises. What are some stories maybe you could share in terms of how it's benefited either yourself or people that you work with, in terms of making this initial transition from being a busy human doing
Sure.
to making the first step towards being a more conscious human being? I mean, what are some of the benefits that
Yeah.
in this first step?
Oh,
Yeah.
look, the benefits are many. Let's just start with, like, how do we do it, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like I say, you got to be deliberate with it. It is the practice. I hear time and time again, because I run classes where I call it the lazy person's yoga. So we just about, it's restorative yoga, and we get the body really comfortable, and we stay in basically meditation. And so I hear even then people saying, oh, I've done this wrong, I can't relax, and I go, well, that is true, because we are so sympathetically dominant in our nervous system, which is the fight flight part of our nervous system, in our daily life. Like, think about it. That nervous system is very useful for our survival, absolutely critical for our survival, because it turns on just like that, right? Yeah. However, the rest and digest nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, takes about 15 to 20 minutes to become the more dominant autonomic nervous system, right? And now, there's those polyvagal theory about the ventral vagal activity, which is, again, is key to this, but that takes time. And so that's why the practice is important. So you can actually practice to the point that you can actually shift the nervous system within like 7 minutes or something like that. However, without practice, if your daily relaxation, is sitting in front of a screen, watching a Korean drama series or Netflix or whatever, that is not relaxation. This is what we think, oh, I need to relax, I'm just gonna like flop on the couch and just switch on another screen. That is not relaxation. That's why when we actually are asked to completely pause, it is tricky, right? So this is where gentleness comes in, and thinking that idea that this is like you're actually relearning how to relax. It is a skill that's been lost in a lot of us. And I would say from my own experience, right? So like with the cancer experience, and as you know, like we all know that with chemotherapy and the treatment just makes you really tired. Like it really absolutely like that bone fatigue that you get, right? So my yoga practice at that point was fairly physical, and there was no way at all I would be able to do any of that. Then I started using the props and got into the practice of restorative yoga with yoga nidra, because they pump you full of drugs and you can't sleep. And so I needed to basically, do things with 2 young kids, like to keep myself present for them, right? And keep my energies up. So I was fairly deliberate, and okay, I had the luxury that I could do it. So I scheduled time. And then even as I was getting better, there's this whole, and I'm not sure whether you had that experience, but once people knew that I finished my treatment, even though I had a job to go back to, I was taking my time. I just felt I needed the space in between treatment and going straight back to work. But there was all this pressure. It's like, oh, you're okay now. When you're gonna come back to normal, and the reality is that I didn't want to go back to my normal, like my normal that I used to know. For me, it was like, how can I create this new normal that I'm happier in, right? But to do that, what I had to do to manage that energy was that I scheduled a time every day 30 minutes for my practice. And I scheduled it. For me, at that point, what worked was that I scheduled it before I picked up my kids. Because I felt that if I didn't do that, I wasn't present for them.
Yep.
Yeah. And would you have thought, like, you know, like so many years of practice that I would have had under my belt at that point, was it easy? Hell no. I'll set an alarm, right? And then, like, all of a sudden the alarm will ring. I still have to send one email off. Oh, I've got to make that. Oh, that phone call is so important now. I've got to make that phone call. But, okay, you know, well, this is how tricky your mind is. This is how tricky our mind is, right? But I can sense every single time, if I do stop, I feel so much better. And I'm so much clearer as to what's important and what's not.
Yeah. And it's so true. I think, you know, for people who are having a, you know, they're processing a health challenge, it might be, you know, physical, emotional, or mental. You're battling expectations more than the disease itself in most cases.
I
Right?
hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's that expectation of what's expected of you in your roles, in your responsibilities in life. But what I like to go back to is, you know, this whole idea of being gentle with yourself, because you know, one of the things when I started out my mindfulness practice, right? They said, sit down, calm yourself, you know, concentrate on your breathing. So you do that, and then they say this: visualize a light coming to your forehead, and everyone's nodding, and I'm like, where the hell is this light? You know, and the more you're talking about this light, the more uneasy, and you know, I'm starting to emotionally beat myself up and say, look, fool, you're supposed to see this light. Where's this light? You're the only person in this class who can't see this blinking light, you know. So instead of being more peaceful, I'm actually more agitated and you know, more agitated and distressed after my mindfulness practice.
The
So
same
it's
thing. It's like we've had, you know, like, you know, I've been to meditation. They go, oh, now relax. The jaw going, the same thing. So I think, you know, this is where the gentleness and that compassion for yourself, like, there's not one way. You know, when you talk about the light visualization, it works for certain people. Like, certain people are really visual. I'm not one, and sounds like you're not one either. I know. I find visualization, because perhaps maybe I'm so used to being so heady, so cognitive, that if you ask me to visualize like a light, what happens is that I go up into my mind. I go up into my brain.
Yeah.
And I start going la 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 la, you know. So
and we start looking for this light.
Yeah, looking for this light. Why is this light not happening? Come on. Exactly. There's something, and then, you know, that's that before you know it, you know, there's something wrong with me because I don't have this light.
Yeah. And at the end of the mindfulness practice, you're the only person who hasn't achieved anything, and you're, you know, more agitated and frustrated than before you started.
Yeah. So I think that you bring up a good point, is that you've got to find a practice that works for you. And that's probably another thing I like to bring up, because there are a lot of gateways to the same place that we're all heading. And I know for myself is, you know, a lot of the mindfulness and the sort of meditation practices, when I was looking, a lot of them were, and rightly so, they were very much Buddhist based, because it's based on the teachings of the Buddha, and he systemized the technology, so to speak, in a great way, right? However, it didn't 100% resonate with me personally, because I was very more steeped in the yogic teaching, and I didn't really want to, like, basically introduce another philosophy on top of what I've got and get all confused. And that's like, you know, and there was one thing I do know, that, you know, having gone through my yoga practice and having to change it through illness, is that how the gentleness is and the kindness of a practice is very important to me, because I'm already so hard on myself. Like, I think, you know, I'm not sure about you, but I mean, I still suffer. I'm not the good enoughness, that kind of feeling sometimes, you know, and we are all critical about ourselves than others around us. So I knew for myself, I didn't need a practice that tells me, sit up straight, put your shoulders back, don't move, you know, or else you're not going to get to nirvana. I didn't need that. Because I'm already like, I've been the one going like doing it to myself. So I needed a practice to actually to be kind and welcoming and accessible.
Yep.
And that's why I basically went deeper into my yoga nidra practice.
Nice. I think that is a fairly common experience, especially with, you know, people from an Asian type background, right? It's about meeting expectations of like I say, your parents or the environment growing up, and the benchmark was always, am I good enough, am I worthy enough, and all this type of stuff. And with the work that, you know, we've been doing over the last 12 years, you know, having conversations and the like, I'm coming to realize that everything works, not for everybody, not all the time, and therefore everyone is in a process of searching for what works for them. And you know, I like one of the quotes, you know, which the Dalai Lama put out some years back. It says that just because someone's on a different path doesn't mean that they're lost. You know, and as a wellness coach, or a, you know, a performance coach or a guide, you know, in some of the life work that we do, it is about, I think, asking better questions and helping people to go into themselves to find the solution, rather than actually going outside to look for an external based solution, which is, you know, what I think a lot of people are realizing now. Yeah.
It's not about us
Yes.
providing the answers, and you know, and that's why I don't hold tightly to what I suggest to people. I say, but what I do invite them to do is that you got to give it a go, give it a good hot go, actually, because as we all know that we all have you know, certain you know, like preferences, and but to sort of, you know, to be exposed to something that is not familiar to us, not necessarily a bad thing, you know, because a lot of times we tend to confuse what's familiar to be what's healthy, but that's not necessarily the case all the time. So, but having said that, if you give it a hot, you know, a good hot go, and it still doesn't resonate, it doesn't work, then okay, time to let it go and maybe look for something else. So when I actually work with people individually and even in a group setting, I think one of the things that's really important for me is to establish a sense of safety, not just in the environment, but within themselves as much as possible. So they come to a place where they can trust themselves first, right?
Yes.
And for me, it's really critical whether somebody comes and see me for pain management, which I tend to get as a last resort, because they've been to all the physios, they've been to surgery, and they're still having this pain. It doesn't really matter in a sense what they come to see me. I feel my role is as a guide to just remind them of their inherent wholeness, which is a belief that I have, that, you know, it's just our life experience and our conditioning has just kind of basically covered that up. And I knew that that was like, as I was trying to explain to you, like my experience, where that sort of deep sadness that I had, even though I, you know, technically recovered and everything looks good, I've got kids, I've got a home, and da, but there was this sadness, you know. It is like, we don't have to have gone through major trauma, whether it's capital T, little t, is all relative, but what happens is that our life experience can really cover up that sense of wholeness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the things also is that, like you say, it might not be an event which is traumatic or painful, but it's an accumulation of
Sure.
small emotions over a period of time which have been suppressed
Yep.
and repressed, and now everything comes up based on triggers in our life experience. So one of the things that I think is fairly common, whether it's a traumatic event or whether it's a pain experience or whether it's just, and for most people, it's an accumulation of little stuff over time, suppressed and repressed, and now it's starting to come up based on triggers in our life. So it's all about deep-seated conditioning, belief systems and patterns. Um, how would you advise someone in terms of hacking away or breaking through at these patterns with your meditation, your mindfulness, and your yoga practice?
If you don't mind, I will pick you up on the languaging. I guess it's
Yeah.
like, I think when we start to become more gentle with ourselves,
Yeah.
We don't want to break ourselves up. We want to, I think how you do it is actually welcoming all parts of you,
Mm-hmm.
even the parts that you prefer that it wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, and it is not welcoming in the sense like welcoming that kind of that relative and quickly welcome them so they leave quickly. That sort of welcoming is like, I'm talking about welcoming like your favorite auntie or uncle, like big arms go, yay, that kind of really, that welcoming. And I think that's a really key component. And when we do that, we come to a place of rediscovering our wholeness.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what mindfulness and meditation really is about. So mindfulness for me is a technology towards meditation, where you start to notice all those different parts of you, then you can actually welcome.
And I suppose it's a process as well of firstly identifying it and then accepting it, and I suppose appreciating or like what you said, feeling it completely with deep acceptance and appreciation, I suppose.
Yeah, welcoming is more like a deep acceptance. It's not so much,
Yep.
oh, I see you. And, quite often, like in meditation, sometimes, we really hear like people say, oh yeah, acknowledge it so the pain will go away. But actually, no, it's like, can you actually welcome that sensation as raw sensation? Even before it is labeled as pain.
Yeah. And I suppose for many people the challenge is, once you've identified it, it's a different calling or different appreciation in terms of acknowledging and accepting it as well. It's one thing to identify it, but a lot of us want to disassociate from it rather than acknowledging and accepting
Rather
it. I
than
think that's
taking it.
also a big stumbling block for most people.
Absolutely.
And quit at this stage. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to be to realize there are also meditation techniques that, and there's nothing wrong with them, like that sort of there are more sort of transcendental kind of meditation techniques that actually, that's the philosophy they work from, right? And nothing wrong. There's room for everything, as we have discussed, right? But ultimately, for us to remember our inherent wholeness that is within all of us, right? We need to basically embrace all parts of ourselves. The parts we like, the parts we don't like, the parts we like a little bit, the parts we don't like a little bit altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about, identifying the emotions. We've talked about, the process of loving acceptance, being kind and gentle to ourselves. What about the sustaining of this feeling of peace of mind and loving kindness? I mean, we talked about the deliberateness of practicing, the benefits of repetition and conditioning, and of course the compound effect, right? The unfortunate thing is that a lot of people only come to meditation and mindfulness when there is a challenge in life. What we want to see is that people equip themselves before they are actually, faced with the challenge. Well, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, it's just.
My thoughts are, I'm just grateful people come, okay? Like come to it as a practice,
Yeah.
like regardless of their life experience. And my thoughts are, look, these practices are great. They are great to live a good life, but they are essential when you're hitting hard times, like all of us are collectively going through with this pandemic,
Yeah.
right? So yes, I would, if I could, have a magic wand, my wish is that, I wish everybody has this tool given to them. I wish I had the tool much earlier. Like I wish my younger self had all these tools that I had, because that would be the magic thing. But I guess it doesn't matter, the main thing is just to start somewhere. There's always the first step. And that's the key thing. And I would like to say one thing. I'm not sure about in Malaysia, but are there a lot of meditation apps in Malaysia?
Yeah.
Access, like there's a lot like American ones, a lot Australian ones.
Well, there are a lot of local, regional, and international ones now, especially over the internet, and they, with the current situation, a lot of people are going online. So one of the things that we are coming to, I think, in this process where everyone's going online, is that there's a lot of noise now, right? And I suppose people, or rather people are, because of the width and the breadth of choice that people have, a lot of people fail to start because they're just overwhelmed with, where do I start? What do I do? So I think there will be a time in the near future where it's always, well, I think in a nutshell, what I'm saying is the best way to start is with a coach or someone that,
that's what I was going to get to.
Yeah.
That was what I was going to get to. I mean, I know here it's so accessible with the apps, and every time, they talk about how important mindfulness and meditation is in the newspapers or whatever. They keep recommending apps. Nothing, I'm not saying that's wrong. I think there's nothing that they're useful in that sense. However, if this is my own life experience, and if you would like to use the practice to develop, like living a good life for yourself, I think it's useful to have somebody that can actually orientate you to what the practice means. And I wish I had that for myself. I've had experiences that wasn't orientated, and sometimes it's scary. Because ultimately it's about letting go, and all of a sudden you feel yourself one with the ground, and it's like, well, what's that all about, so that was what I was going to say. Apps are great if but I think ultimately it is useful, and I find it even now. I have a sort of a meditation spiritual mentor that I work with, and it's not that they're not in the sense that I don't, they are just, again, a guide. for my spiritual development.
Yeah, and I think it's so true today because there's so much of information out there, and once we give focus and depth to what we are doing and the path we're following, sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by missing out on the breadth or the perspective of the life experience in that sense. And going through this process with a person or with a group of people is always, that human touch and that component is so essential. Yeah.
And I know that definitely for my for the community that I'm serving is like, just having the group, the ability to come together online to discuss practice and support each other for practice it's been a godsend for everybody. Yeah.
So at the end of this video clip, we're going to be posting, your contact details for people who want to, connect with you and have a chat or, take it, to the next step. What would your advice be for people who are currently, just generally facing disturbances or disruptions in their life due to, the COVID experience? And you guys, I think in Victoria are still in complete lockdown, are you?
Yeah, we are. Hopefully things, we're doing good. We're doing good at the moment. Hopefully things will change in the next week or so. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So let me rephrase that. So kind of advice for somebody thinking of starting or somebody just going through difficult.
Well, I think that there are two components. One is for people who are just wanting to equip themselves with the life disruptions that are coming upon them, to prepare themselves. I liken it to a building manager having fire drills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have fire drills in the event that there's an emergency. Now you're conditioned and you're able to respond.
Okay.
So there's one group of people who are doing it for health and well-being, and there's another group of people who are experiencing trauma or pain or some form of challenge. It might be grief. It could be just
Look, I think wherever
wherever
you are, my advice: take the first step. This practice is magical. The magic is that you have to do it.
Great. So maybe what I can do is wrap it up into a couple of points. The first one is just get started. The second one is be deliberate in the process. Be gentle with yourself. Trust yourself in the process, and ideally work with someone to pair along this journey.
Absolutely, yeah. And
Great.
I think the go gently is the real important bit, and don't be afraid to if it doesn't work initially, it's not that you can't meditate. It's maybe you haven't found the right process, for you.
Great. So just
because it's simple as you're talking about the light. It didn't work for you, right? And the same thing with like a lot of meditation, the focus on the breath. For some people, it doesn't work, especially those who suffer from anxiety. So they might need a body scan to get some sort of bodily relaxation before they can actually go into meditation. So I think, to know that there are a lot of different gateways into the same destination, so to speak.
Yeah, great. And it's excellent to have a chat with someone like yourself who's integrated different modalities, in the physical yoga with the meditation and the mindset practice, and to see and hear a lot more of your success stories. So thank you once again for your time, Wai Ying. I look forward to having a chat with you again on and off the recording screen. And looking forward to staying connected and hearing more of your success.
No problem. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
All the best. Have a fantastic weekend, and I look forward to reconnecting with you again.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kavita.